Welcome to the Deep Dive, the only show that rips open your research files and tells you exactly what you need to know, saving you from a mountain of reading and dropping you right into the aha moments.
And today we are taking an exhilarating and frankly dangerous trip back to New York City. The year is 1903.
Our mission is to immerse ourselves in the turbulent life of one Molly Murphy. She's an Irish immigrant who, against all the odds, is making a living as a private detective.
She is, you could say, the ultimate independent woman in an age that was just defined by anxiety and massive social constraint for women.
We have a really rich collection of sources to pull from here, detailing her professional life, her struggles, and this incredible historical context of Manhattan just after the turn of the century.
And of course, the very complicated dynamics of her love life with a certain Daniel Sullivan.
Right. This isn't just about gumshoe work, is it? It's really a study in survival.
Exactly. Our sources establish the Molly Murphy persona right away. She's described as irrepressibly charming, which you could feel immediately.
I also saw indomitable creature and a feisty, independent heroine.
Yes. And that independence is, it's absolutely essential to who she is because the world she's navigating, especially what they call the dark side of New York, is just brutal.
The action we're focusing on today all happens in a really compressed time frame. It starts just after Thanksgiving and moves right into a seriously harsh New York winter.
And her whole world is centered around this little house on Patchen Place. It's her headquarters, her sanctuary. Well, she tries to balance, four interconnected cases?
Four, almost simultaneously. It's kind of incredible.
It's a dizzying pace. We're going to cover, the exemplary suitor, who turns out to be not so exemplary.
Then there's the mystery of a girl found in the snow in Central Park, which leads directly somehow to organized crime.
Right. And from there, the murder of a thrill-seeking Yale student. And then we pivot to the theatrical chaos of the casino theater's alleged phantom.
It's a lot to unpack, but we'll guide you through what really matters in these sources. So let's start by establishing the core physical reality of being Molly Murphy.
Yes. The necessity of disguise and the ridiculously high price she pays just to do her job. #Reabo. The necessity of disguise and the price of independence.
Okay, so when we talk about Molly being a professional investigator in 1903, you have to realize that the city street itself is basically a weapon used against her.
It is. She can't just stand still and observe the way a man could. If she does that, she's inviting immediate trouble.
And the trouble isn't just from the criminals she's tracking, it's the police, the very establishment that sometimes she's even working with.
Absolutely. The sources lay out this stark social constraint. It's baked right into the city's laws about vagrancy and, public morality.
So what does that actually mean for her on the ground?
Well, Molly notes it explicitly. Any woman who is found just loitering alone on city streets at night, especially in the darker avenues or near, say, the theater districts, she is highly likely to be arrested.
For prostitution.
For prostitution or just public nuisance. The simple act of observation of just existing alone professionally after dark is immediately criminalized for a woman.
That's a fundamental barrier to her work, right? If surveillance is 90% of the job and standing still means you risk jail time, she has to become invisible.
She does.
Yeah.
And her chosen method of disappearing is where her ingenuity really shines, even if it forces her into some pretty extreme discomfort.
We get a very specific description of her surveillance disguise, don't we?
Oh, we do. She literally has to mask her gender and her class status. She poses as a street urchin, basically adopting the rags of the lowest class of city life.
We're talking the threadbare jacket, knee breeches, hobnail boots.
And her hair, which is, a key signifier of her being a woman, is piled tightly under a cap.
And maybe most painfully, she intentionally dirties her face and hands.
Yeah.
She carries a broom, posing as a crossing sweeper, just making these half-hearted attempts at the work.
It's the perfect cover, though, because young, scrutty boys were both invisible and, at the same time, everywhere. Especially around the busy theaters and vice dens of Midtown Manhattan. They were just part of the scenery.
Right. No one would look twice. Molly even details the low wage she pretends to earn, saying she might make 20 cents for hours of work.
And there's this really poignant moment of reflection in the source material, where she admits that after being out in the freezing New York cold in those clothes, she finally understands how truly sorry she feels for the children who actually have to live like that every day.
She adopts this identity out of professional necessity, but you can feel that the empathy she has for the marginalized is this constant thread running through her character.
And that empathy, that frustration with her lack of autonomy, it's a huge theme. It connects her life on the street to her life back at home on Patchen Place.
Ah, yes, where she finds her social safety net.
A very supportive and highly progressive one.
This brings us to her inner circle. Her neighbors and friends, Elena Goldfarb and Augusta Mary Walcott.
Better known irreverently as Sid and Gus.
And they are the quintessential bohemian element of early 20th century Greenwich Village.
They immediately represent this challenging counterpoint to the rigid social norms Molly faces every single day. They're Vassar graduates.
Which in 1903 signals not just, wealth or status, but a real intellectual seriousness, a belief in women's higher education.
And their home is just this hub of modern thought. Their curiosity is boundless. It pushes way beyond traditional New York society. We see them experimenting with food from all over the globe.
They're making Mongolian stew and Moroccan couscous.
Yeah, they're not interested in traditional domestic stuff. They openly talk about their desire to go to the Amazon just to see anacondas.
I love that detail.
Yeah.
And this modern global curiosity, it extends right into their intellectual diet, right?
It does. The source material notes Molly walks in on them discussing the absolute cutting edge of psychological theory in 1903.
They were reading Freud on dreams.
Reading Freud and planning to keep dream diaries.
Let's just pause on that for a second. Discussing Freud in 1903 in New York that's a really significant detail. His ideas were revolutionary. They were challenging all of Victorian morality, the idea of the rational mind.
And for these Vassar graduates to be incorporating the concept of, suppressed desire and the subconscious into their everyday conversation, it just signals how far ahead of the curve they were.
It shows they're intellectually dismantling the same social structures that are forcing Molly into knee breeches and a grimy cap.
And that intellectual dismantling feeds directly into their political
The
activism.
suffrage movement.
Exactly. They are heavily involved, planning to march in the upcoming Easter parade. They're part of the VWVW Brigade.
Bassram wants votes for women.
Their philosophy is crystal clear. Women have been forced to live as poor, dependent creatures for too long, and they are ready to seize power.
And Molly, who is this fiercely independent, income-earning professional facing genuine peril every night, she sees the absolute ridiculousness of her situation. She joins them. She sees the fight for the vote as an out-and-out war that must be won.
It's a powerful dichotomy. By night, she's forced back into the identity of an impoverished boy. By day, she's strategizing with two of the most progressive women in the city on how to gain political power.
It's clear her social life just reinforces why her dangerous professional life is so necessary. Okay, let's see how that professional life plays out in her first case.
So this first case, it offers a fascinating window into early 20th century marriage customs and the role of discretion in high society.
Molly gets hired by this wealthy Jewish couple, the Mendelbaums.
Right. Their daughter, Lonnie, is about to marry a man named Leon Roth. He was found by a matchmaker. And on paper, he was ideal.
Yale education, considerable private income. The parents were just looking for reassurance, really, a professional investigation into his moral character.
They wanted to confirm he had no secret vices.
So Molly starts tailing him, and her initial findings were almost aggressively boring.
That's a great way to put it. She finds him living on Lower Fifth Avenue, which by 1903 was respectable, but it was rapidly losing its shine. The height of fashion was migrating further uptown.
And his routine was just mundane.
Mundane doesn't even begin to cover it. He met with young men at the Knickerbocker Grill, which was stylish then, but he only drank water.
Water, series.
Water. He went to the Manhattan Theater to see Ibsen's gloomy and socially challenging play, A Doll's House.
Which is hardly the choice of a rake or a scoundrel.
Not at all. And he went shopping at Macy's for his silk ascot.
It's worth noting that choice of play. A Doll's House is about a woman realizing she has to leave her restrictive marriage to find her own identity. For a guy who we later find out enjoys playing rough, that choice is almost comically ironic.
Or maybe it's just a sign of performative respectability. He looked like the picture of early modern sophistication and sobriety. But then Molly followed him for 2 nights toward the true heart of New York's vice culture.
West 42nd Street. Rumored to be a den of ill repute.
This is a major turning point in the surveillance, and it forces Molly into her most dangerous disguise. She's following him into a territory where these discreet uptown houses of ill repute, known by specific names like Fifi or Madame Bettina, were operating.
So she's risking pneumonia and arrest, watching him enter this faceless, nondescript building somewhere between 8th and 9th Avenues.
She waited for hours in the freezing cold. She was fearing she was about to discover a secret drug habit, an illegal gambling den, or Something worse.
And she cautiously pushes open the door of the building, preparing for the worst, and what does she find?
Total anticlimax. Instead of a brothel, she finds a single elderly man just diligently working a treadle sewing machine.
It was his tailor.
It was his tailor. She'd spent 2 grueling nights confirming that the man was merely exemplary, pathologically dull even. Molly concluded, based on all the evidence she gathered, that Roth's public behavior was exemplary.
So, case closed, easy fee. Molly proves the man's a saint.
Right.
Not so fast. Our sources give us this final twist that completely negates her initial conclusion. And this is where the dark side of New York truly intersects with high society.
What happens?
Well, later, Molly spots Leon Roth again. This time, he's near the spectacular Casino Theater. But he's not drinking water or discussing Ibsen. He's transformed into a classic stage door Johnny.
One of the rich men who would linger after performances, spending excessive money on the chorus girls.
Exactly. And he had a specific whispered reputation for playing rough.
And he leaves the theater with a specific chorus girl named Lily, a character who, tragically, is going to resurface later in Molly's investigations.
Right. And the sources note that Lily is most generous with her favors, which is a very coy 1903 way of saying she was available for financial exchange.
So this flips the entire verdict. Roth wasn't dull. He was just compartmentalized. He was performing respectability for the Mendelbaums while secretly pursuing his vices in the theater district. His exemplary suitor persona was just that, a persona. Molly's final report must have been devastating.
But what's truly revealing about the society of the time is the Mendelbaums' reaction.
Yes. They paid Molly for the information, they acknowledged its truth, but they decided to proceed with the marriage anyway.
Why?
Because they weren't really looking for a saint. They were looking for wealth, stability, and control. They relied on their daughter, Lonnie, who they knew was headstrong, to keep Leon Roth in order.
So the vice was acceptable as long as it was contained by the institution of marriage and money.
Precisely. Molly's role was just to provide the data set, allowing them to proceed with full, capitalist awareness of his flaws. It speaks volumes about the pragmatic view of marriage among the wealthy elite at the time. A few discrete vices were just part of the cost of admission.
Wow. Okay, so if the Roth case highlighted the hypocrisies of high society, Case File 2 just plunges Molly right into the immediate physical danger of the city's underbelly.
It does, and it connects her life directly to the grim realities of poverty and organized crime.
And this one starts, ironically, in a kind of romantic setting. Molly and Daniel Sullivan are on a date in Central Park, enjoying a brief moment of peace.
And a snowstorm hits.
Yeah.
They find a beautiful, unconscious girl, described as doll-like, just lying in the snow.
And the crucial detail Molly observes right away is her footwear.
Dainty, soaked evening slippers. This tells Molly immediately that the girl, who we later learn is Jessie Edwards, ran away from something terrible without any time to grab a coat or even change her shoes.
She's rushed to the German hospital, which you would know today as Lenox Hill.
And the initial medical analysis gives Molly her first real piece of investigative direction. The doctor finds no sign of physical assault. Her undergarments were tied with a drawstring, and they were undisturbed.
So the trauma was external, psychological or emotional, leading to shock.
Right. And this is where the source material introduces a fascinating element of early 20th century forensic science, the alienist.
Which was the term for a physician who treated the mind, a forerunner to the modern psychiatrist.
Exactly. Molly consulted Dr. Birnbaum. He's an Austrian physician who is extremely modern because he studied in Vienna with Dr. Freud.
There's Freud again. This is priceless. Dr. Birnbaum is an example of that same cutting-edge intellectual wave we saw Molly's friends embracing.
He is. And he diagnoses Jessie with severe trauma resulting in mutism and amnesia. He explains that deep shock can literally rob a victim of their ability to speak. And he agrees to work with Molly, suggesting techniques like hypnosis to try and unlock her memory.
So while the doctor is using this new science, Molly applies old-school detective work.
She goes back to the scene, retracing the girl's path in the snow. And she confirms Jessie walked to that spot from the north.
Right, which suggests she fled under her own power, terrified rather than being carried and dumped. She wasn't just left there, she was escaping.
Yes, but the clock is ticking, and the urgency just escalates terrifyingly. Molly discovers the girl is slated for transfer to Ward's Island.
And for you listening, this wasn't just a regular hospital. Ward's Island was the massive city lunatic asylum known for horrific conditions, abuse, and the general abandonment of its patients.
Molly knows this is a fate worse than death for the girl, so she orchestrates this dramatic rescue.
She claims to be the girl's sister.
She forges a note authorizing the transfer to home care and whisks Jessie away in a cab. She brings her to the relative safety of Patcham Place and organizes Mrs. Tucker, a neighbor, to be a nursemaid.
Once she's home, Dr. Birnbaum attempts hypnosis, and this is when the crucial, though incomplete, breakthrough occurs.
The girl struggles. She's showing severe distress, and she whispers a single name, Annie.
And Molly assumes this must be the girl's name, or someone intimately connected to her trauma.
Now comes the terrible mistake. Molly places an advertisement, hoping to find the girl's family, and two Hungarian men appear.
An older, sinister-looking man and a younger man who claims to be her betrothed, a man named Laszlo.
They claim the girl is Anya Bartok, recently arrived from Hungary. And despite Jessie showing palpable fear and no recognition at all, Molly, following the evidence that they responded to her ad, lets them take the girl.
You can just feel the sickening realization in the text. Molly reads a newspaper report about a police raid and connects the description of the older Hungarian man to Salvador Alessi,
Better known in police circles as the Don.
the feared leader of a brutal Italian gang. They were involved in sophisticated operations like bank robberies and contract murders.
She had, completely unknowingly, delivered a traumatized victim directly back into the hands of a dangerous criminal syndicate. Her goal immediately shifts from identification to emergency rescue.
And the rescue plan is something ripped straight out of a thriller, and it's inspired by her friend, the famous investigative reporter Nelly Bly.
To find Jessie, Molly has herself committed to Ward's Island. Nelly Bly helps, claiming Molly is her delusional royal sister.
This requires just incredible bravery and risk. Molly willingly submits herself to the institutional horror of that asylum. She's facing not just the psychological terror, but the real physical dangers of the unregulated treatment of the time.
It's a moment of profound professional commitment. And the ultimate trauma that finally unlocks Jessie's speech happens inside the asylum.
Jessie recovers her memory and her voice after witnessing an orderly attempt to sexually assault Molly.
Right. Molly fights back, which is an act of defiance that leads to her being subdued, sedated, and thrown into solitary confinement.
But that intense shared trauma, the raw violence of that moment, it breaks through Jessie's amnesia.
And once her speech returns, she gives Molly the full story, a confession that just links everything together.
Jessie reveals that she and her friend, Annie Parker, the blonde dancer, were with a Yale student, John Jacob Halsted,
The subject of Case 3.
in his red automobile when it crashed near the Bronx marshes. When the car wrecked, 3 Italian men, the Don's gang, arrived.
And here is the brutal detail. They shot and killed Annie, who was injured and couldn't move. They put Annie's body in the trunk.
And Jessie, in terror, jumped out of the car and just fled into the snow till the shock silenced her mind. They later disposed of Annie's body in a creek, which we learn was the East River.
The sheer violence and ruthlessness of this gang just reveal the chilling connection between all these seemingly disparate worlds Molly is investigating. High society thrill-seeking, the vice culture of the stage door, and sophisticated organized crime. They're all tangled together.
Okay, so now that we have Jessie's confession, we can circle back and finally understand the tragedy of John Jacob Halsted, the Yale student who was supposedly a murderer and a thief.
Right. Remember, Miss Van Wacom, Halsted's aunt, hired Molly to clear her nephew's name.
He was being accused of robbing the Silverton mansion and shooting their butler, and the narrative was supported by the fact that stolen silver was found near his wrecked car. He looked like the perfect spoiled scoundrel who committed a crime and ran away.
So Molly and Daniel travel up to New Haven to investigate the young man's background. They speak to Halsted's friends at Yale, and they confirm he was immensely wealthy, bored, and addicted to excitement.
This detail on the culture of wealthy Yale students is fascinating. They confirm his reputation for risk-taking was extreme. He was walking on the library roof, high-stakes gambling.
And critically, experimenting with drugs. The sources specifically mention cocaine and opium.
How common was that kind of drug use among the elite in 1903?
Well, opium had been around for some time, but cocaine was relatively new to the recreational scene. It was often considered this thrilling, daring vice among the wealthy who could afford the habit and, the discretion.
It suggests a dangerous combination of wealth, boredom, and a craving for absolute sensation.
Absolutely. He told his friends he was heading to a musical review or a theater the night he disappeared. The implication is clear. He was looking for a night of excitement that involved both the stage door scene and likely the use of drugs.
And Molly is immediately confronted by the class prejudice surrounding him. Harry Silverton, the victim's son and Halsted's polo friend, firmly believes Halsted is the killer.
For Silverton, the equation is simple. Money plus drugs plus risk-taking equals violence. He points to the evidence. The wrecked car, the stolen goods.
But the real forensic evidence at the crash site in the Bronx tells the true story. The story that Halsted was the victim.
An examination confirmed the car was seriously damaged. The steering wheel column was pushed completely out. But more critically, they found bullet holes.
Bullet holes that were shot into the car.
Exactly. This is a powerful, undeniable clue. Halsted wasn't fleeing after a robbery. He was being shot at.
And the local constable also confirmed tracks from a second automobile and the long blonde hair they found in the car.
Points directly to Annie Parker, confirming the passenger list from Jessie's story.
So Molly and Daniel can now piece together the crime. Halsted, Annie, and Jessie were intercepted by the Don's gang. But why? Was it a planned robbery that spiraled out of control when Halsted resisted?
Or did the gang specifically target Halsted, knowing his reckless habits and that he probably carried large amounts of cash or valuables?
Given the gang's professionalism in contract murder and bank robbery, it seems highly unlikely they were just relying on random chance.
I agree. Halsted's reputation, his drug use, his associations, they may have made him a vulnerable and profitable mark. The stolen silver was almost secondary loot.
The postscript of this case confirms the full tragedy. John Jacob Halsted's body was later found in a remote woodland, buried along with the stolen items.
So his name was cleared of being an escaped scoundrel, but his death was confirmed as the result of the gang's execution.
The sources note that 3 lives, Halsted, Annie Parker, and Martha, who we'll get to in the next case, were squandered for such useless trifles. It speaks to this profound moral carelessness that's gripping both high and low society.
And that brings us to the final, and I have to say, most melodramatic of Molly's concurrent cases, the Phantom of the Casino Theater.
This offers such a bizarre contrast to the raw violence of the street gangs. It shows how desperation manifests in the world of entertainment.
This assignment comes through Una Sheehan, who owes Molly money, and she's acting on behalf of the star, Blanche Lovejoy.
Blanche is described as pushing 40 and desperate for a huge comeback in a musical called Ooh La La.
Right, at the magnificent Moorish-style casino theater. And Blanche is convinced that the ghost haunting the theater is trying to kill her.
Molly, ever the pragmatist, sees dollar signs and a good undercover opportunity.
She negotiates a $50 fee, contingent on finding the human culprit quickly. Her disguise here is less about safety and more about invisibility backstage.
She's cast as an inconspicuous schoolgirl, complete with spectacles, pigtails, and a gingham costume.
And Molly documents 3 distinct and increasingly dangerous, haunting incidents. They're all aimed at Blanche during rehearsals.
First, the wind machine mysteriously activates and nearly blows Blanche right off the stage.
Second, a jug of lemonade leapt off a table and soaked Blanche during a tender love song.
And the third incident was almost fatal. A large, fake, marble stage pillar fell and narrowly missed Blanche. The sources say the pillar was heavy enough it would have seriously injured or killed her.
So Molly turns her attention to the cast and crew, gathering backstage gossip. The general feeling is that Blanche is aging, and the show must be a hit. So the atmosphere is just one of intense pressure.
The suspects include Robert Barker, the director. He's devoted to Blanche, but she rejected him.
And Desmond Haynes, the choreographer.
Oh.
He's a former flame, but his current romantic interests, as the sources coyly hint, doesn't lie in girls.
We also find Lily here again, the chorus girl who courted stage door Johnnies like Leon Roth.
Right. And she's noted for gossiping constantly about the Phantom and all the backstage trauma. It's just this closed system of high-tension nerves, desire, and theatrical ambition.
Molly's deduction after that third incident is so keen, she connects the dots immediately. The haunting is too perfectly staged, too dramatic.
She suspects Blanche herself is orchestrating the near misses simply to generate sensational publicity.
And the strategy worked perfectly. Tickets sold out instantly. Reporters were shouting prices. New Yorkers were, as they said, dying to see the ghost. Blanche had successfully manufactured a media frenzy.
Molly confronts Blanche with her theory, but Blanche denies everything. She fires Molly for failing to find a human culprit and claims she's going to hire a spiritualist instead.
She's determined to maintain the illusion of the supernatural threat.
And then the tragedy strikes. The next incident, the pillar falling again, perhaps this time unintentionally, hits the chorus girl Lily, killing her instantly.
The cost of manufactured fame suddenly became very real and very fatal.
The case concludes with an even darker revelation that connects this seemingly innocent haunting to genuine pathology. Molly receives her payment from Blanche with a note, and then she finds Martha,
Blanche's childhood nurse and devoted dresser.
taking her own life.
Oh, wow.
Molly realizes that Martha, in her desperate, misguided loyalty to ensure Blanche's comeback, orchestrated all the haunting incidents. Her love for Blanche was so profound she was willing to commit crimes and likely murder.
And this is where the cases overlap again. Molly suspects Lily, the chorus girl, may have known too much about the scheme. Maybe she saw Martha rigging the stage or overheard gossip that implicated Blanche's inner circle.
Lily's death, followed by Martha's suicide, confirms the true lethal high stakes of this theater melodrama. It confirms that the line between theatrical performance, pathological devotion, and literal murder was frighteningly thin in 1903 New York.
So, moving from these criminal cases to the emotional core of Molly's life, we have to talk about the constant tension that defines her relationship with Daniel Sullivan.
The suspended captain of police. This conflict, it really underpins every single choice she makes.
Daniel is dealing with a huge crisis of identity and status. He's on suspension, he's bitterly dealing with the shame, the lack of status, and crucially, the financial uncertainty.
He knows Commissioner Partridge is not going to easily admit a mistake and reinstate him.
And his anxiety, it manifests as this extreme concern for Molly. He worries constantly about her professional safety. He calls her like a cat with 9 lives.
And he's frequently admonishing her for her recklessness, for pursuing violent gangs and infiltrating asylums.
Molly is generating income, and Daniel is not. This leads to this fascinating role reversal where Daniel reluctantly agrees to work for her as her affiliate.
He helps her track Roth and investigate Halsted in New Haven, and Molly, with this dry wit, calls him her junior.
This professional arrangement, it just highlights a profound clash of values between them. Daniel consistently views her work as not serious. He wishes she would pursue a safer, more socially acceptable profession.
He feels this patriarchal need to protect her.
And Molly absolutely rejects this. She fights back fiercely against his patronizing tone. She makes it clear she refuses to be the demure miss who waits at home doing embroidery.
She demands to be treated as an equal partner, especially in her own business.
The financial struggle is a constant irritant in their relationship. Molly is characteristically frugal and highly insistent on getting paid for her services.
And Daniel, conversely, struggles deeply with his lack of income. It forces them to take the less dignified elevated train, the L, rather than cabs, which for a former high-status police officer was a bitter pill to swallow.
That financial stress and the clash over her independence, it culminates in several emotional arguments. The sources detail one specific fight where Daniel leaves her doorstep without a kiss. He feels slighted and scolded for avoiding her unconventional bohemian friends, Sid and Gus.
Right. They represented everything he felt threatened by.
The resolution to their internal conflict comes through external grief. Daniel's father passes away, and it forces him into this period of deep reflection and emotional vulnerability.
Following his father's funeral, Daniel is finally reinstated to the police force. But in a monumental shift, he realizes the police department is tied to the corruption and the system that hurt him.
And he decides to say to hell with the police department.
He proposes a formal, equal partnership with Molly, committing fully to her world.
This is a huge personal evolution for Daniel. He's choosing Molly's independence and their partnership over the security and status of the establishment.
Yet Molly remains hesitant, which reveals the complexity of her own feelings. She still values his potential career and status. Maybe she's worried that embracing her life full-time will perpetually limit his.
But despite her professional hesitations, she makes a powerful choice of emotional commitment. Despite their recent fights, she decides to put her own independence aside, just briefly, to travel up to Westchester to support Daniel in his grief over his father's death.
She prioritizes their relationship, and she acknowledges that even as the independent detective, she needs him just as much as he needs her support. #C11. Conclusion.
So stepping back from this whirlwind of crime, deception, and personal conflict, we're left with this dense tapestry of early 20th century New York history, all of it uncovered by Molly Murphy in a shockingly short period.
She exposed the grinding, constant reality of female autonomy, or the lack thereof. It forced her to choose between remaining a respectable woman or becoming a professional detective hidden under a cap and knee breeches.
We track the beginnings of modern intellectual thought, the advent of forensic psychology through Dr. Birnbaum, the Austrian alienist, and his use of Freudian concepts to understand suppressed trauma and amnesia.
and we witnessed the deep, organized corruption and violence that spanned the city. From the ruthless Italian gang led by the Don, which connected high society Yale students to stage door dancers.
To the horrific institutional indifference and abuse faced by patients on Ward's Island.
And we saw that dangerous intersection of fame and desperation in the theater world. The tragedy at the Casino Theater just confirmed how sensationalism could lead directly to pathology.
Driven by the desperate loyalty of Martha and resulting in the murder of the gossiping Lily.
For you, the learner who wants to be well-informed about this historical period, this deep dive offers a vibrant, unfiltered look at a professional woman trying to navigate a world that actively resists her ambition.
It forced her to constantly measure the cost of her freedom against the offer of stability.
And the risk Molly ran was not abstract. She was targeted by killers, she risked pneumonia, she faced sexual assault and institutionalization in an insane asylum, and she navigated a city where simply loitering could land her in jail.
Her independence was won at an enormous personal cost.
And this brings us to our final provocative thought. Building on the sheer volume of violence and risk she willingly incurred.
When Molly worries about choosing between her fiercely won independence and a secure future with Daniel, we have to ask you,
Was her unyielding determination to maintain her individual power and professional identity more vital to her ultimate survival and sanity in that chaotic, dangerous city than any protection Daniel Sullivan could possibly have offered?
that's a powerful question about the nature of agency in a restrictive world, something to mull over as you navigate your own complex choices. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.